It's a common misconception that at the end, Stan was, like, completely, like, out of it or, like, didn't understand, like, where he was or, like, and that's actually it's a needs a little more clarification than that because the thing is, like, I could have come to Stan towards the end and gone or even, more towards the end, but I could have gone to Stan and said, "Stan, a an alien ship just landed on Hollywood Boulevard. Like, it's insane. It landed, and people are out there taking photos of it," and he would he would take you at your word that it happened, and then he would could have a real conversation with you about it. So then he'd say, "Oh my God, it's out there. What color is it? Like, are there ambulances?" Like, it's not that he just didn't understand. Like, he was this old man who didn't have his wits about him. He was just ever trusting. Because to him, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, why would you come lie to me about something? Like, why, you're going to tell me the truth. So then he would just react and have he could write down what he said and it would be very coherent and it would be all the questions you'd ask if it was real. And so he was like there, like he had a thought process, like he could process the thoughts and the situations. It's just that he was overly trusting. So if I just read the script of Jurassic Park and told him it happened, he'd just believe you.
This is Jonathan Hairspray Bolerjack. You probably haven't heard of that name. For the past several years, he has been a comic artist selling his work at venues like New York Comic Con. He also has a career in video editing, working on various promotional and first look videos for movies like Fantastic Beasts, John Wick Chapter 3, and Deadpool 2, along with being assistant editor on several documentaries. However, he is probably most known for being an assistant to Stan Lee during the last years of his life. John was also an outspoken critic of individuals in Stan's circle who were taking advantage of him for profit. In a 2018 article by Bleeding Pool, John stated, "To be very clear, Stan is 100% not doing any conventions/public signings. In the last few years, his well-being had been compromised by people for monetary gain, and that practice is over." In reference to the at the time recently publicized scandal involving Stan's ex-business manager, Kaya Morgan. Recently, Jonathan announced a crowdfunding campaign for Stan Lee, The Final Chapter, a documentary claiming to expose the mistreatment of Stan that went on during the final years of his life, with the big claim being that Jonathan has hundreds of hours of footage showcasing this unethical treatment. The reception to this announcement has been polarizing to say the least, with many viewing it as a shameless attempt to make money off of Stan by hiding this evidence behind a $300,000 paywall and questioning why Jonathan didn't take action earlier. However, what many people aren't aware of is Jonathan's history of profiting off of Stan. Having him sign artwork for him to sell, using his likeness to promote his artwork and convention booths, taking extravagant trips with Stan, like going to Tokyo Disney and eating at the notoriously pricey Club 33, selling signed comics and memorabilia given to him by Stan for large amounts of money after his passing, contributing photographs he took of Stan to be used as NFTs. Jonathan was, and still is, partaking in the same manipulation and exploitation of Stan for profit as the other leeches in Stan's circle, yet acts like he has the moral high ground on them. It is for this reason that I believe that this documentary is not being made out of altruistic motives, but for profit and to further Jonathan's career as a video editor with a high-profile documentary. So, the premise of this documentary is that Jonathan was Stan Lee's confidant during the final 4 years of his life, assisting him, being present at his signings to pass him comics to sign, and recording him during convention appearances and other situations, during which Jonathan witnessed Stan being abused at the hands of his business managers, Max Anderson and later Kia Morgan. Both had publicized scandals or lawsuits involving their abuse of Lee, and there exists video evidence of Lee being forced to sign large amounts of autographs in a short period. Lee was so frail that in many later recordings of his signings, Anderson and Morgan can be seen guiding his hand and reorienting his marker so that he wouldn't stop. In his final in-person convention appearance at Silicon Valley Con, he infamously had to be reminded of how to spell his name and appeared gaunt, wearing a large blanket over himself.
Put him back up.
Stanley, Stanlee.
Sorry.
Stanley.
However, right off the gate, the premise of this documentary is bizarre, as Jonathan claims to have recorded hundreds of hours of footage showcasing Max and later Kia's abuse towards Stan. It begs the question of why Jonathan didn't release this footage publicly earlier, or hell, how he got hundreds of hours of footage of an elderly man being abused without once stepping in to help. Moreover, the campaign goal of $300,000 raises questions. Jonathan claims that the costs for the documentary are for production and post-production costs. However, in the same trailer for the documentary, we have excerpts from people who have seen a cut of the documentary.
When I saw the documentary, I knew some of it, but like most people, I didn't know all of it.
Seeing Stan in that situation, being taken advantage of, was really hard to watch.
This isn't just a fluff piece trying to attack somebody. This is like, I'll just show you in their own words.
So, if we already have at least a rough cut of the documentary, and Jonathan is a proficient video editor, photographer, and graphic designer who has been working on this for 6 years, why does he need all of this stuff to finish the documentary? Not to mention, much of the documentary is made up of footage already taken by Jonathan, and the comic artists who are shown off in the trailer are all artists who are friends with Jonathan, with Jonathan being tight enough with them to regularly receive signatures from them. Rob Liefeld even made a post about John regarding Stan. It begs the question, how much Jonathan really had to spend when he could have edited the important footage of the abuse, contacted guys like Rob on Zoom, and made a lower budget documentary exposing Max and Kia's abuse. Then there's the utterly baffling campaign rewards. Captured Hero, a stunning photo comic capturing rare, candid moments of Stan Lee shot by filmmaker Jonathan Bolerjack. He mentioned this in an interview with PopXG, but Jonathan would film and photograph Stan even outside of the public eye. It's already odd that he was doing this to begin with, but it begs the question of what his motives were when he used these photographs for his own personal benefit. In fact, this is not the first instance of him doing so, as he also contributed photographs of Stan to be used as NFTs. Let's hear some excerpts from John about Stan's state of life during the period that he was taking photographs.
And then I got to sort of the more declined, correct for his age version of Stan. So I really got to sort of see it happen in sort of real time. So early on, the younger Stan, he just sort of you'd see his gears start turning and he just asked me a really random question, something like, what movies are popular right now? And then, because he was going blind, his macular degeneration was sort of kicking in and he didn't really go to a lot of movies. And so that was kind of a lot of our conversations. But as he got older and his wife had passed away, he really got a lot, not that he wasn't introspective before, but he got a lot more, introspective about life and death and sort of the meaning of it all. And there was a big taper off of sort of more lighthearted conversations. I mean, don't get me wrong, like he was always joking and we were laughing a lot, but you could tell that he was really starting to sort of think about things more and sort of reflect on a lot of his life and decisions that were made and whatnot. So it got more serious as we got more towards the end, end run. So I would ghost him every day. And in the last 6 months, he would say that pretty frequently, that he was sort of ready to go. And it makes you sad when they do say that. But like I was telling Steve earlier, is he was such a satisfied man. I mean, can you guys think of anyone who who feels fully satisfied, like with their life and their accomplishments and doesn't have a lot of regrets and he's like the only person I've ever met who is so fulfilled with his life. So when a guy who's fulfilled tells you he's ready to die, of course you don't want him to die. You want him to stick around, but he was so fulfilled that you were kind of like, yeah, you're kind of done. Like your wife is gone. You've accomplished everything you've done. You're like one of the most influential people in the world. Like, and you're old and your body's shutting down. Like, I would kind of probably want to be dead too. Like,
yeah, Stan was claiming that he was ready to die. And during these vulnerable moments in Stan's life, John was there, snapping photographs. Okay, let's look at the other rewards. Oh boy, postcards featuring those photographs. A $100 signed movie poster featuring signatures from the film crew and legendary comic creators, aka Jonathan's friends. A group video conference with Jonathan for only $125. Wowee! Interesting how you were willing to speak on Pop XP for free, but now people have to pay $125 to have a Zoom call with you. 0 backers? Come on guys, get on this. A $125 limited edition photo signed by John. $50 to attend screenings of the movie when it releases. Gee, I'm sure that none of that Kickstarter money is going to go to Jonathan flying out to Phoenix, San Francisco, Seattle, Tokyo, Philadelphia, New York City, and so on. There's a lot more than what I've shown here. A hardcover book featuring more photographs, $250 for a one-on-one conference with Jonathan himself, $300 for a foil variant of Captured Hero, $300 for a special thanks in the film, $350 for a one-on-one video conference with the cast and crew, $500 for a CGC authenticated foil variant of Captured Hero, $500 for a featured special thanks in the movie, a $2,000 photograph with Stan's signature on. Wait, wasn't this documentary meant to be critical of using Stan for profit? And the most baffling reward of all, a Stan Lee Los Angeles tour with Jonathan Bolerjack. Embark on a thrilling, one-of-a-kind tour through Los Angeles with film director Jonathan Bolerjack as he takes you to key locations featured in the Stan Lee documentary. Experience the city like never before as Jonathan shares behind-the-scenes anecdotes and reveals the secrets of the film's production. Visit the places where bribes were offered, schemes were plotted, and millions went missing. Stories that have never been told until now. This is your chance to walk in the footsteps of Stan Lee's incredible journey, uncovering the dark and fascinating moments that shaped the legend's final years. Yeah, so not only was this guy recording and taking photographs of Stan for himself, he has the gall to offer a tour where he will tell you every single miserable thing that happened to the guy and where they happened. You might be starting to get the hint that Jonathan isn't making this with Stan's best interest in mind, especially with a reward tier that is this tasteless. Not to mention, with the way that John's constantly plastering his name all over this, it really seems like this documentary is just a way to progress John's video editing career while also making some money.
Once I got out of film school, started working in documentary film, and a friend of mine was working with Stan, and I thought this would be awesome. You know, I'm a big nerd. I could Trojan horse my way into meeting Stan if I could, film something with him. And so we sort of pitched him on the idea of doing a reality show about his travels, because I thought it was pretty fascinating that he was at that point, he would have been a spry 89, going to conventions and whatnot. So that's how I got sort of introduced to Stan.
But John would never use Stan to make a profit, right? Yes, he would, because prior to meeting Stan, John had spent several years working at a comic store, claiming to have done so when he was 13 to 26 years old in multiple interviews with Pop XP Network.
I worked at a comic store in San Diego when I was 13 all the way up till I was 26, so I was already a pretty firm comic nerd by that point.
So, even before befriending Stan, this was a guy who was well aware of the value of his signature.
But he has a great awareness of what goes on the convention circuit, what works. And what I like about this guy, he does something a little more unorthodox. You know, he gets the sketches, he gets the he gets the autographs, and he gets the variant covers, and he's made a great business. And one of my best friends in the whole industry, let's bring him out, Mr. John Stanley Bolerjack.
Boom.
Boo, you stink!
In another one of those interviews, we even get to hear his philosophy on scalping comic artist signatures.
But what I also saw that I thought was pretty cool, when we were in Texas, there was that girl and that other kid. They were like a young, remember that?
I still talk to you. Yeah.
I thought they were together, but they're kind of together. But yeah. I love the fact that they were kind of traveling around and trying to make a buck too, trying on the fringe.
Well, yeah, that was the first time I'd seen it. I mean, I'm going to be turning 40 this year, so I guess I have to sort of admit that I'm not necessarily young anymore. But I used to be like I used to be one of the youngest people in the room, sort of trying to hustle. And I did notice that as the older I got, I was still the youngest person. So, and I just I never really saw anyone kind of like younger than me sort of hustling. Cause you see, everyone at the shows, who the people are, and so it was kind of, and they're whatnot people. So it was sort of the first time I had seen people who were pretty young, sort of do it. And I sort of got, I shouldn't be excited because they're going to be competition, but I sort of was like, okay, you have to keep that new blood in there, or the whole thing dies. I guess I could just turn the lights off when it's over, but you kind of want other people there to sort of be picking up the torch.
I thought that was exciting too, to see them, because I was like, who are these, they're these young, and a girl in it too. I thought that was cool because it is so rare. Like, I don't really see that.
Plus I could tell they were hustlers, because if you go get 10 comics signed by Roy and all you have to do is donate, you could flip those 10 books for good money on pretty low, turnaround. And those guys were in that line, for quite a bit. So I could tell that not only were they, they were good at it, they had a plan. They weren't just kind of messing around. They seemed to take it pretty seriously. So
right, and that's what I liked about them. They had like a plan. Oh, I see that all the time too. Yeah. I love that.
So getting comic artist signatures to scalp online is just good old-fashioned hustling. Something that John was familiar with, because from 2015 to 2017, John would have Stan sign his artwork to sell at his booth. Like this post promoting John's appearance at Comic Cave in April 2015. Oh, and did we mention Livio and John also have most of their artwork signed by the Stan Lee? Or this post promoting his artwork at SDCC. Jonathan will be in the house at the Stan Lee Collectibles booth 429. Or this post promoting his appearance at Middle East Film and Comic Con, which states that he will also bring along some comics and art signed by the Grandmaster Stan Lee himself. You're probably starting to see the bigger picture, not this picture of John at MEFCC selling Stan's signature, but the bigger picture that John would regularly use his ties with Stan to promote himself, even getting various signatures from him to make profit from. Jonathan would also travel with Stan, getting to go to places like Tokyo, and even getting to eat at Tokyo Disneyland's Club 33, which is notoriously expensive. He also got to meet celebrities like Millie Bobby Brown at Rhode Island Comic Con through Stan.
And he just hits me with that, and those are actually my favorite kind of moments with him. I mean, like going to movie sets and stuff is awesome. It's very fun, but those are like the things that are like the best.
Along with the various artists who he befriended through Stan and is able to profit from through selling their signatures and having them feature in his documentary. Because, as Jonathan said himself, he was obscure before meeting Stan.
Do the signing with Stan. It's like I was just a comic, and I was an artist alley grinder. So this was like just going to the Super Bowl all of a sudden. Pluck you out of high school right to the Super Bowl.
So for John to act like he didn't benefit from his friendship with Stan is incredibly dishonest. Speaking of selling, after Stan's passing, John has sold several of the signed comics he received from Stan for large amounts of money. Like this issue of Hulk 181 for $15,000 in 2021. How about this? Avengers number 8 for $2,000, Captain America 101 for $2,000, and Tales of Suspense for $1,500. Then there's this post where he describes $2,500 for a comic signed by Stan and the recently deceased John Romita as too cheap. Or this post of him pondering selling a pair of shoes signed by Stan. And these are just some of many examples of Jonathan selling off items signed by Stan for large amounts of money. There's also the instance of John raffling off 2 Stan Lee signatures, a raffle that you would enter by spending $100 at his comic shop, Archrival Comics. Wait, Archrival Comics? Don't they have an exclusive cover for the comic being offered in the final chapter Kickstarter? Yep, they sure do. Also, wait a minute, all the comics offered in the Stan Lee Final Chapter Kickstarter are eligible for CGC authentication for $60? Sure would be cheeky if it turned out that Jonathan was a CGC facilitator. Oh, wait, he is. CGC facilitators receive a salary for the work they do, and Jonathan hasn't clarified who would be grading the comics for the crowdfunding campaign. So, while I can't confirm if Jonathan is profiting off the CGC grading in the campaign, it's certainly interesting. What's also interesting are his posts boasting about the resale value of the comics he sells. Posts like, "These were $50 each. Hopefully, some of you got some when I posted about these a few weeks ago. The US version sells easily between $100 to $300. And sold for $199 on eBay. Get it signed by James Tynion for the same price." In the Pop XP interview about the comic market, he also mentioned,
I mean, I'm going to be turning 40 this year, so I guess I have to sort of admit that I'm not necessarily young anymore. But I used to be like I used to be one of the youngest people in the room, sort of trying to hustle. And I did notice that as the older I got, I was still the youngest person. So, I was 30, I was 35, and I never really saw anyone kind of younger than me sort of hustling.
Jonathan was 40 in September 2024, but when he was 30 to 35 years old, he was hustling for signatures to sell. If he was doing this since he was 30 years old, or 10 years from 2024, then that means he was hustling for signatures back in 2014 and continued to do so for years, including the period when he was friends with Stan. So, a guy who was very savvy about the comic market befriended Stan, got him to sign a bunch of his stuff, sold off some of it while Stan was still alive, and then held on to other stuff that he resold after Stan's passing. But that's not all, because Jonathan would also post about the gifts he received from Stan, starting as early as 2016 with this post of him showing off a Marvel Mania International envelope with Stan's signature. Also, note the caption. You know you got too much stuff when you find this and completely forgot you ever had it. Really begs the question of how much stuff he received from Stan. Like these never-before-seen photographs of Stan, which of course Jonathan was offering for sale, or these photographs of Stan that he also sold. Needless to say, John wasn't just in this to help out Stan. John benefited financially and was able to further his career from his association with Stan, receiving thousands of dollars worth of signatures and memorabilia, getting connections in the comic book and film industry, taking photographs and video of Stan to profit off of. Just like all the others surrounding Stan Lee in his twilight years, John was also an opportunistic vulture. All the funnier considering in that Pop XP interview about Stan, John brags about never taking advantage of Stan financially and never receiving gifts from him.
Stuff that can't be said publicly and stuff, but I want people to know that John has been offered things and he never took it. And that's why I will always love this guy and respect him, because he could have profited huge on this. And this is just something I'm saying for you, John, that you never took that advantage. You never took that easy route and stuff. And that is a testament to who you are. And that's,
as we now know, that is a lie. John's ties with Stan have been a great boon for his comic book selling business, and now he wants to do the same with his film career. Ever since he started filming Stan, John likely knew how lucrative this footage would become. And with a portfolio of mainly promotional shorts, John likely wanted a high-profile project to get his name out as a filmmaker. The purpose of Stan Lee, the final chapter, isn't to get justice for Stan, but to further line the pockets of a man who leached off of him during the final years of his life.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.